presented by the Strong Blue Line Foundation and powered by Moose Ridge Coffee in Snake River Landing, Idaho Falls. Welcome to the podcast, where former San Antonio police officer, author, and pastor Tim Rupp walks you through real-life scenarios involving our police officers and digs into the depths of facts and opinions on each case. This is Cop Talk, and it starts now.
Hello and welcome to Cop Talk, the radio show and podcast of the Strong Blue Line. I'm Tim Rupp. With me is the operations manager for the Rev.FM, Mr. Gary Austin. Hello, Gary.
Hey, Tim. How's it going?
It's going really well, man.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, we're actually in May, and of course, pre-recorded a little bit. We recorded this a little bit, but we're right in the middle of, well, actually, my daughter gets married. Officially out, a public wedding. She's already married, but they're having their public wedding a couple of days from now on the 23rd. And so we're in Tennessee.
Nice.
And,
I know you've been looking forward to that.
The Smoky Mountains.
Yes, the great Smoky Mountains. Yeah.
The song Smoky Mountain Rain.
Yeah.
Done by, the one that was most popular is Elvis Presley. Of course, Smoky Mountain Rain. And Eddie Rabbitt is the one that wrote that song.
Huh.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Eddie Rabbitt wrote Smoky Mountain Rain. And they questioned, should I give this song to Elvis Presley or should I record it myself? He made the wise choice. Elvis Presley. He also recorded himself, and Ronnie Millsap recorded it. And anyways, in the Smoky Mountains, though. And no, Gary, I'm not smoking here in the Smoky Mountains. Just in case you're wondering, how are things back there in Idaho?
Oh, great. You know, it's May. I mean, into May.
So is it spring or winter or
that's
summer?
What we don't know. That is the biggest question.
It's the
enjoying the weather regardless. Idaho weather.
All right. Well, we've got an interesting story to get to about a Connecticut sergeant that was fired. Very interesting story. Anyways, before we do that, we want to honor our officers who were killed in the line of duty on this date in history, and these come from the Officer Down Memorial page. And I have Town Marshal Jesse Dixon, Quincy Police Department, Florida. End of watch Monday, May 21st, 1866.
Ooh.
Yep, right after the Civil War, 1866. Not a whole lot of battles fought in Florida. Pretty far south, but there were some. I mean, they got down in there.
Yeah.
Marshal Dixon and a posse attempted to arrest several men who were creating a disturbance in Quincy. The suspect opened fire on the posse, killing Marshal Dixon. 5 of the suspects were convicted of his murder and hanged in Quincy 5 months later. 5 of these guys.
Wow.
They ain't messing around in Florida.
No.
That's where Governor DeSantis is, and they don't mess around in Florida.
They don't mess around, no.
Marshal Dixon was a Civil War veteran, having served as a private in the 1st Florida Infantry. And so here, he's 26 years old. 26 years old, he goes off to fight in the Civil War. You know, thousands of men were killed in the Civil War.
Yeah.
He survives the Civil War and comes back, becomes a marshal, and gets shot and killed. Wow. 26 years old, that's all we have. We don't know if he was married. We don't know if he had any children or anything. That's all we have on Marshal Dixon.
Huh.
What do you have, Gary?
This is Police Officer Jeremy Allen Brenton, Nogales Police Department out of Arizona. I think that's right, Nogales.
I think so.
End of watch, May 21st, 2021. Officer Brenton was working an overtime assignment and assisting with lane closures at a road construction site when he was struck by a car as he stood outside of his patrol car. He was flown to Banner University Medical Center where he succumbed to injuries the following day. He had served with the Nogales Police Department for 18 years, survived by his wife and 4 children. He was 40.
Wow.
So,
yeah, we always see construction when you're traveling.
Yeah.
If you just come to, if you miss construction, just come to Idaho Falls. Pick any street, and you'll run into construction.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous construction, especially when you're on highways.
Yeah.
And the road crews are doing construction. We see all this stuff where fines increase while workers are present. And all this different stuff going on. The fact of the matter, it is dangerous. In some states, some jurisdictions require that the construction company hire officers and they have their lights in and they're directing traffic, or they're just there for the safety of the road crew, because the road crew, they're busy doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not really paying attention to traffic that much. And but you have officers there, and he's working an off-duty gig. He's making a little bit extra money for the family.
Right.
And gets ran over and killed out of working. So very careful. Be careful around construction sites. Slow down, especially when there are workers on site. Very important. So, Gary, I had this one. This caught my eye last month. It's dated April 15th, 2025. And this comes out of the Register Citizen. That's the name of the publication, Torrington, Connecticut. The title is Connecticut Police Sergeant Fired for Pepper Spraying Suspect May Be Reinstated. So we're going to get into the details of this, but what you have here, Gary, is you had a sergeant who was assigned to the jail or assigned to prisoner intake. I'm not sure. I'm thinking he was a corrections officer, but he may have been a patrol sergeant that was assigned there. It depends how the city works. But he was a sergeant, so he wasn't some rookie officer, but he pepper sprayed a prisoner who was handcuffed. Let me just give you that. And you're like, okay, what's going on? Tell me more. We'll tell you more. But let's get into this. This is out of Hartford, Connecticut. A state appellate court decision requires the Torrington Police Department to reinstate Sergeant Gerald J. Peters, who was fired over a 2020 incident in which he pepper sprayed a handcuffed man. So right there, let's look a little context. We're talking 2020. Mm-hmm. Remember what happened in 2020?
Oh, yeah.
George Floyd riots and all that stuff, and accusations against police, improper use of force, all that stuff going on that year. And so that's what's going on in the middle of it. The decision by a unanimous 3-judge panel reverses a 2023 decision. So the decision came out 3 years later by Judge Ann Lynch in State Superior Court, vacating the 2-1 decision by a 3-member labor arbitration panel that ordered Peters reinstated with full back pay and seniority. Lawyer Michael Rose, representing Torrington, said the city plans to ask the state Supreme Court to review the decision. The state's top court may decide to review the decision, but is not required to do so. So what had happened here is, and we're going to go into the details, but just let me give you the plain facts of the case. Sergeant Peters pepper sprayed a handcuffed prisoner. The city fired him over it because they said that he violated department policy. And so he violated department policy, and they fired him over it. And the court upheld that, and then a superior court came back and said no. They overturned it in a unanimous decision, and you must give him full back pay, full seniority. In other words, if you fired him in 2023 and now it's 2025, he retains his seniority. You give him all that back pay, as if like nothing ever happened. Huh. So he gets all, which is right thing to do.
Yeah, right.
He gets everything back. Okay, so Peters had roughly 30 years experience as a police officer. Like I said, this guy wasn't a rookie.
No.
I mean, 30. He had more experience than most officers are old. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this guy's probably in his 50s.
Yeah,
at least in his 50s, including 20 years with the Torrington Police Department. He was fired according to the decision. So he had 20 years with the police department, total of 30 years of law enforcement. The law gives courts only very limited authority to review decisions by labor arbitrators and the State Board of Mediation and Arbitration. The central issue before the courts in the Peters case was whether the arbitration panel applied the law correctly. The law requires review of the use of force by police officers to be undertaken objectively, meaning from the perspective of a reasonable police officer, not from the subjective point of view of the officer involved. And so what they're saying is that, Gary, if you're a police officer and I'm the city and I fire you because I think as the city, well, you didn't properly follow procedures.
Right.
Okay, so you violated policy, I fire you. The arbitration the way they're supposed to decide whether you did right or not was from the objectivity of a reasonable police officer, not you personally as you saw what was going on there, but just from a generic police officer.
Oh.
So you see, the problem is if you don't have all the facts, you don't have all the stuff. Everything is different. So what was going on in this case? Because if I just told you, Gary, hey, this police officer pepper sprayed a handcuffed prisoner in violation of city property, you'd think, well, ought to be fired, you know, ought to be disciplined, whatever it is, you know, a couple of days off, suspension, fire, whatever it is. Lynch ruled, this is the judge, ruled that the two-member majority of the arbitration panel had strayed from the standard by writing their decision about what Peters thought and perceived during the incident. So the arbitration said, you know what, what was going on? Why did this 30-year veteran officer who was a supervisor do what he did? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the right questions to ask.
I do too.
You know, go down to this where but the Appellate Court wrote that the arbitrator's decision went on to conclude that Peters was complying with the department's general orders, which in turn recite the correct legal standard. So what's the legal standard of this? Viewing the panel's decision in its entirety, it is clear from the panel's determination that Peters had complied with the general orders that had applied to the correct objective standard in assessing Peters' use of force. Judge Robert Clark wrote it in the Appellate Court. So what Judge Clark said is, look, the general orders is the officers is supposed to take everything into consideration. Mm-hmm. And what did he do? So let's read about the incident. The incident at issue in the case stemmed from an arrest of Christopher Spetland and the incidents at two Torrington businesses on May 23rd, 2020. This is right at George Floyd. Mm-hmm. I think George Floyd was like May 20th.
Yeah.
It was May of 2020. So this was right in the middle of it. Spetland, this is the bad guy, this is the crook, had an extensive criminal history that included arrest and convictions for assault and interfering with police officers. The Appellate Court decision says, reciting the facts found by the arbitrator panel. In the course of his arrest, Spetland attempted to escape, kicked at officers, and threatened the officers with physical harm. His speech was slurred, and he appeared to be intoxicated. A knife was removed from his person. Peters, this is the sergeant, was acting as officer in charge of the police department's booking room that day and saw Spetland in the Sally Port, where it took 3 officers to remove him from a police cruiser, the decision say.
Wow.
Now, Gary, let me tell you this. You asked me, why would it take 3 officers to remove this guy from a police car? Mm-hmm. And the reason why it takes 3 officers a lot of times is because of all the stuff that's going on to try not to hurt the guy. Mm. You know, because back in the old days, it wouldn't take 3.
Right.
It would take 1. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be pretty, but it would take 1, and that officer would take charge.
Yeah.
And Peter saw Spetland. Now, here's the sergeant. He's in charge of the booking that day. Peter saw Spetland resisting the officers by trying to free his arm from one of the officers' grip, trying to hit that officer with his elbow, and kicking another officer in the shin, according to the decision. So this is what the sergeant saw. He saw these things going on, okay? The officers brought Spetland to the ground, held him there until a wheelchair was brought to them, the decision said. It says Spetland made threats and continued to resist as the officers brought him into the booking area. And Peters determined that, quote, he possessed an imminent threat to both himself and the other officers. So you have a 30-year veteran supervisor that saw this guy resisting, saw him kicking, elbowing other officers, and he determined that he proposed an imminent threat.
Yeah.
Because there was a policy that an arrestee could not be placed in a cell with handcuffs, Spetland's handcuffs would have to be removed so he could be put in the cell. So, Gary, they couldn't put him in the cell with handcuffs on.
Right.
You say, well, why is that? Well, they don't want people to hurt themselves. What people will do, they are handcuffed behind their back they'll run themselves into the wall with their head. They'll
Really?
charge the wall and hit their own head in the wall.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Well, we're not talking about the brightest.
Right.
But could they do that with their hands out? Yeah, they could.
They could.
In natural tendency, you're not going to do that because
Yeah.
your hands are going to come up. I mean, you could do that, but it says that Peters determined that the best way to avoid injury to the suspect and the officers was to use pepper spray. So he's thinking about this. He's making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
He says, okay, let's use pepper spray. Peters took a can of pepper spray from one of the officers and began shaking it so this Bedlin could see it. And he warned that if he continued to threaten the officers, Peter was going to spray him. It wasn't like he just got out and got mad at him. He was shaking it. And he said, okay, you're fixing to get this. Kind of like your dad with the belt. You want some of this?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Yeah.
When Spetlin continued to struggle and curse, Peter pepper sprayed him, removed him from the wheelchair, took him to the floor without causing physical harm. The decision continues. A second legal issue is whether public policy made it necessary to fire Peters. So Sergeant Peters used what I would consider reasonable force.
Yeah.
To subdue him and to get him in where nobody else got hurt. The suspect was not injured. The officers were not injured. He was taken care of. The case was taken care of.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking is what else could he have done? Because this isn't a guy who is willingly getting out of the patrol car and
Exactly.
He's struggling. He's fighting back. He's belligerent. You have got to do something, and
that's the thing. And sometimes policies handcuff. And here's the deal: policies ought to be guidelines.
Yeah.
And I remember when I assisted in writing policies on the police department, words like shall or should are huge. Mm-hmm. Where you say, if you wrote in your policy, an officer should refrain from using pepper spray on a handcuffed prisoner. So what's that say? The officer should refrain from doing that. That doesn't mean you can't do it.
Right.
It means you should refrain from it. And if you do it, explain why you did it. Mm-hmm. But if you write in the policy, an officer shall refrain from using pepper spray on a handcuffed prisoner, you just said he can't do it.
Oh.
And now if he does it, he violates policy, and we are a black and white policy, and you broke policy, you're fired. Mm-hmm. See, that takes the discretion out of the officers.
Yeah.
If you wrote a policy that an officer should refrain, then you're letting that officer make that decision. Mm-hmm. Gary, you hired this guy, this gal, you're paying them, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80,000 a year, whatever you're paying him. You're giving him a gun. You're giving him a badge. You're giving him a car to drive, the authority to arrest people. Give him the authority to make a decision.
Yeah.
About this kind of stuff. You're doing all this stuff. You're giving him all this responsibility. He needs to be responsible to make decisions. Mm-hmm. And as you see this, you scratch your head and you say, after all, just from what we read, and we've got no reason to disbelieve this because the court saw that, and the court said, "What are you guys doing? Mm-hmm. This guy did everything he could. Nobody was injured. What he did was exactly the right thing to do."
Yeah.
So what the city should have done was look back. Let's say, do we fire this guy? Well, why don't we just go back and rewrite our policy?
Yeah.
And say, good job, Sergeant. We didn't think about that.
Mm-hmm.
We will not say that you shall not, but we'll say that you should not. Mm-hmm. And then you could put caveats. If you do, you got to justify your use of force, Gary.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you pepper spray a handcuffed prisoner or not, or anybody. If you walk down the street and spray a 20-year-old football lineman for a college, mm-hmm. justify why you sprayed him.
You're right.
You've got to justify. Well, he's a big guy. Well, what was he doing? He's a big guy.
Well, that doesn't make sense.
Just because he's a big guy, he said that you're not going to arrest me, officer. You 5'3" officer. Yeah. You're not going to arrest me. Okay, I'm going to pepper spray you.
Yeah.
Okay, you just justified it.
Right.
And so you have to articulate why you use force, any force, whatever that force is. And so you've got to write policies where officers can understand the process. You give them a job to do.
Yeah.
That's like, Gary, you were in construction.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was your foreman, I say, okay, Gary, you're doing the job, first-hand job. I got a 2x4 here. I want you to nail that 2x4 to that 2x4. And there's a box of nails. And you can't use a hammer.
Right.
You're like, how am I figure it out? And if you do it wrong, I'm going to,
you're fired. Yeah.
So that's an extreme example, but that's what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving these guys and these gals extreme authority. You say they're professional policing, treat them like professionals. So what does that mean for the officers? That means if you're treated like if you're paid like a professional, if you're treated like a professional, if you're given wide discretion like professionals have, then you're going to be held to account.
Mm-hmm.
Then don't go out there and be a knucklehead and just start spray painting, pepper spraying handcuffed prisoners because you're mad at them and they called your mama a name.
Right.
I mean, they're going to do that, okay? If you didn't know that in the academy, they're going to do that. So don't do it, because we are not supposed to use force for punishment. Mm-hmm. That is not our job. We don't punish people. We arrest people. We may have to use force. Officers will have to use force to arrest.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure the force is justified, and make sure the agency, the city, is behind the officers. If you don't have your chief executive, if that's a sheriff or a police chief, behind the troops, standing behind them, you're going to have problems.
Yeah.
You're going to have what that equates to is higher crime rates in your city.
Exactly.
Because the police are going to say, you know what? They don't back me up. I'm not going to make the arrest because I'm not going to be put in a position where I get accused of using excessive force and lose my job. I've got bills to pay.
Yeah.
So all that comes down to professional policing. Officers need to be held to a high standard. Give them the benefits that they need to support their family. Give them the pay they need. Give them the medical benefits and all this stuff they need to support their family. Give them the authority to do so. Then hold them responsible. Mm-hmm. Don't say, well, we're not going to give you anything. We're going to restrict you so much, and we're still going to hold you responsible. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
No, it does not. And I think that it's, hearing this story reminds me quite a bit of other situations that it's like, what are we coming down to? That policy is going to be no longer use handcuffs to subdue or to restrain your suspect. It's like, well, that would be silly.
Yeah.
Because not everybody is a model suspect. Like, yep, you're right, I'm caught, take me to jail. Human they're going to fight it. It's the fight or flight thing, but to protect officers, it's this. I agree with the sergeant. He did what exactly
he did. What else is going to do?
Exactly.
Well, I can't think of a more reasonable thing that he could have done.
No.
You had 3 officers fighting him. That means, Gary, instead of 1 officer booking a prisoner, you have 2 extra officers that you're paying. Think of it from a economic sort of point. You got 3 officers tied up. And Gary, you're out there because you just got in a minor accident and you're calling the police and you're waiting. The reason why you're waiting an hour and a half is because you got 3 officers tied up with this knucklehead. Mm-hmm. And so he's causing all these different problems. And the sergeant took care of it. He didn't abuse the prisoner. He gave him full warning. He told him what's going to happen. If the prisoner would have just said, you know what, I'm being dumb here. Let me just stop doing this. Mm-hmm. I will settle down and let you guys go ahead and put me. They're not going to win.
No.
Yeah, and here's another thing, Gary. When I became a police officer, and I was warned of this, and I was told this, and sure enough, it's true. A lot of them, they started getting mouthy and started getting fighting after you put the handcuffs on them.
Oh, yeah.
Because they know, like, oh, okay, I'm handcuffed. You can't touch me now. You can't do anything. I do whatever I want to do. And I mean, I've had them try to kick my windshield out on the way to, on the way down to jail.
Gosh.
All kinds of stuff. Oh yeah, they, there's reason why there's cages in the back of cars now.
Yeah.
And stuff. When you put them in a cage, you call a paddy wagon to take them. And sometimes you got to put leg irons on them. Put them in shackles and stuff because, and some people are just crazy, some people are on drugs and or alcohol and stuff and just go wild, and it's crazy out there. Officers need to protect themselves, protect the public, and need to give them the tools to do so. We give them the tools and don't want them to use the tools. Yeah. That doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
All right. Well, hey, Gary, we are out of time.
Again?
Well, yes, again. Hey, if you miss Cop Talk, you can catch Cop Talk on Amazon, Google, Apple, Spotify, and what's the other one? YouTube. Come on, Gary, YouTube. Hey, thanks for listening in. If you have a topic or question you want addressed on Cop Talk, please send me an email. You can email suggestions, questions, or comments to coptalk@therev.fm. That's coptalk@therev.fm. Thought from the good book today. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he is held fast in the cords of his own sin. Thanks for joining us and helping to make the thin blue line a strong blue line.
Cop Talk is presented by the Strong Blue Line Foundation and sponsored by Moose Ridge Coffee in Snake River Landing, Idaho Falls. Questions and comments are always welcome by email to coptalk@therev.fm. Listen, follow, leave a review, and share this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or YouTube. And visit thestrongblueline.org to learn how you can be a supporter. Cop Talk is a Rev FM production, produced and edited by Gary Austin. Thank you for joining us on Cop Talk.